Hello, everybody. Hi, welcome again to Awaken Your Relationships. I am Julie Murphy, and I wrote a book called Awaken Your Wealth, and wealth and money is just the result of everything else in your life. So I have started this awakening series to talk about awakening your health, awakening your spirit, awakening your work life, and today is Awaken Your Relationships, and Rita is the expert in the relationship piece. How's the internet connection over there? We good?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
We've been going, it's been a little spotty, maybe because of all the riots in Northern Illinois.
Yeah, that's been a little crazy lately. I keep saying that what's happening to people in the world right now is the fact that anything that you have unresolved within yourself, that this whole situation, whether it's the health crisis, the economic crisis, the social crisis with all the protests, like whatever's unresolved within you is actually coming to the surface to actually be healed. And it's not necessarily always coming out in the most loving of ways.
You know, I had a friend, a mentor of mine, and they would say, everything that comes up is a part of you that's coming up to be loved and recognized and acknowledged.
Oh.
So if you hate somebody right now, if you're angry, if you feel pulled apart, it's because it's a part of you that you're reclaiming, and it's coming forth so that you can love it and bring it back home again. So if we can change how we see all of these difficult emotions, instead, you know, even the hate, even the rage, even the tension, and say, you know what, it's coming up for me to give it the love and attention that it didn't get. And that's why it split off in the first place. That's why that little part of our soul split off, is because we didn't get the love and the kindness and the understanding we needed when those things happened. And it'll keep coming up to give you the opportunity to reclaim it and to bring it home.
Kind of reminds me of like children, you know, when kids are acting out, you know, they always say that it's just that they need attention. And, you know, and they will get attention either way. They will get the attention, whether it's good attention or bad attention. You know, it just matters that their needs are not being met. And they're actually just trying to get their needs met by having some attention shine to something. So,
well, they're trying to feel connected. You know, it's very scary if you're someone who your energy system is designed to feel connected. And when someone isn't connecting with you, children and adults feel very unstable. They feel ungrounded, because at least 50% of the population is wired to feel connected to other people. You know, they aren't completely isolated within them. Maybe they've been forced to be, but they're really the better version of themselves when they're in some sort of relationship or engagement with other people.
Right.
And when you feel cut off, people become very scared, and they go right back to all the abandonment things when they were kids. And that's us too. You know, when we feel disconnected, we need to, number one, find a way to get connected again.
That's so true. And it really goes back to those basics, you know, for people. You know, it is kind of, you know, we were talking earlier about how often we avoid the path that is actually the most effective for us. And can you talk a little bit about that? You know, I know I'm in my world, that's what I'm dealing with. And that's how we, you know, wound up with the conversation, that the path that I have avoided addressing is now rearing its head, and I'm addressing it. And I would love for you to share your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us were never taught all of the options available to us to express ourselves. And it wasn't role modeled for us. We didn't think it was a good thing. Maybe we thought it was okay for men, but not for women. You know, there's all this stuff going on that we really weren't taught and role modeled how all the different ways that we can express ourselves, and we haven't played with them. And so we've played with a few of them, our favorites, which could be buying somebody off, It could be ignoring somebody or working harder or having a positive mindset and positive psychology, but in reality, you need to be doing the thing that you're most afraid to do, because not doing it is what's gotten you in this position in the first place. Avoiding avoiding the thing that seems counterintuitive. Now, for many empaths in my world, it's the last thing I will ever do is get angry at somebody and call them out on something, because that's happened to me a good portion of my life, and I saw that person as a monster, and I didn't want anyone to think that I was a monster. But that's because I was an empath. That's because I had a sensitive nervous system. Other people, they have their own resources. They have their own things. So we're walking in thinking we're talking to the 4-year-old version of ourselves that was abused, and we're not. When we're talking to somebody else, we're talking to a fully formed adult who in many ways has more power than we do in certain situations. And they've been living with their own issues for a long time.
Right.
And so being the bully or being the person that you never thought you would be, you start to discover in some situations is what's best for everybody.
Right.
A lot of people don't want to be bullies, but they're just following their natural biological inclination to, fight and escape and to protect themselves at all costs.
Well, and what I've noticed is that that's where then it becomes a belief system in how we operate and interface in the world. And then that becomes the basis then of how you interact, not only in your relationship with a spouse or your kids, or even in employer relationships. Because I've seen in the work that I do is that if you're dealing with something in your personal relationships over here, you've got the same bird over as your boss, the exact same bird. It's a different face, a different name, and a different environment, but it's the exact same patterning, because you're linking up with patterns in your life that, because your belief system or your limiting belief system, many of us have limiting beliefs, that you're hardwired from your childhood to create that patterning. And we all have it. And the question is what's yours and how toxic is it? At least that's what I have witnessed with clients.
I find the way out is to be curious.
Tell me more.
So when we have something happening, we tend to want to believe everything that we hear in our head. We want to believe the story. We want to believe how we feel. We want to think that's all there is. And if you can pause and be curious, I used to, I still draw tarot cards a lot. I love drawing tarot cards. It gives me insight and reflection on what I'm thinking. And when I pull a card, the thing I ask is this my fear that I'm reading in the card? Or is this, the possibility of what could happen? Is this real? How real is this?
Sounds like I use a pendulum for the same thing. I use a pendulum.
I have to ask myself, Yeah, I have pendulums. I have, I love tarot cards because they're so beautiful, and pendulums because they come in so many, they're works of art. But if you can be curious as to why you're so angry, if you can be curious as to why you're so triggered, you'll start to get your way out. As long as we sit there and think it's somebody else that's making us do something, they may be pushing our buttons, but we, just like a child, gave them all the control over our adult woman human self. We said, here, I'm going to let you control how I feel. Right. And that you're given the keys to the RV over to the lunatic when you do that. You have to allow yourself to be curious and say, what's really going on here? And what's my next best step? And am I making this choice because I'm afraid? Or am I making this choice because intuitively it's the right thing? And if you're not sure, then you need to go for a walk. If you're not sure, you need to pet your dog.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I always talk about that. It's your body intelligence. Like your body is telling you the answers. It's just that we have ignored it time and time again. And I witnessed this recently, even in my own life. One of the things, a pattern that I have noticed when women stay in relationships too long, and then they finally decide to face the thing that they're afraid to face, and they have the conversations and it leads to divorce. When that divorce process is a toxic one, where it's more of like a process of assassination on one party or the other, exactly 2 years after the divorce ends, and this is in every case, including my own, that then disease develops in the body. And the degree of that disease depends on how much you've been willing to face what you have buried. So I was in a relationship for 17 years. So that's a long period of time. And it was really funny when I went for my annual exam at my OB. He's just like, I get the phone call that the cells aren't correct. And I was just like, oh yeah, I teach this stuff. He goes, well, Jewel, they're abnormal, but they don't even categorize. And I'm like, I know, because I've done a lot of work. I'm like, because it didn't turn into, but I have so many clients that it turned into ovarian or uterine cancer. And I just find this so interesting. And I literally had a client call this morning who said the exact same thing to me. I was just sharing, she says, how are you? Well, and I was sharing my story, and she goes, oh yeah, I had that abnormal pap too, right about 2 years. And she's been doing her work, you know, like we don't have to call in the health crisis unless we choose to keep avoiding what we really need to face.
Right. And the stuff I love about what you say is it's very high level thinking, and the information that hasn't been out there lately has been like a visual of what's actually happening. So when we feel a conflict inside of us, it creates physical tension. And that physical tension narrows your blood vessels, shuts down your nervous system, shuts down your immune system, in specific parts of your body. So, I mean, for me, my root chakra, my sexuality was shut down for decades. And I didn't know what was wrong with me. I'd go to the doctor and be like, you know, I've been married for a long time. I'm having problems with this. You know, I've never been interested, you know, and his only advice, well, you know, relationships are hard. I'm like, really? There's something going, I've been shut down from the waist down most of my life, and you're just going to tell me relationships are hard? It's because it's a physical side effect of pain, of emotional pain.
My understanding is that the physical is always the last to show up, which is why, you know, after the trauma and the divorce is over, after leaving a toxic person, then it takes 2 years for it actually to manifest in physical form.
Because it's subtle.
Because you change it in the energetic realm first, and then it goes into the physical as a result.
You and change how you think and how you engage.
Yeah, and certainly that's one of the things that's drove me to do things like this, because, you know, it's been really interesting to me that as we've started this Awakening Your Relationships, that I've had many people, you know, people I went to grammar school with, high school with, that have been watching me on Facebook, and clients going, like, clients, I didn't even know that stuff was going on. And I did pretty good with clients, but they've avoided it for so long. You know, and it's like, they're unpacking it and going, okay, I'm going to face all the stuff I didn't face all these years. I'm now going to face that I knew my husband was having all these affairs on me all these years. And I'm going to face, you know, and these are things I had no idea that people were doing, you know, and so, but this is good because we don't talk about it, and we need to start talking about
it. We have to start talking about all of these secrets, because this own certain flavor, you know, to it. It was a little blue collar, you know, I grew up in a neighborhood where, you know, there was alcoholism going on. There was, you know, abuse going on in the homes, and this was the norm. And what we're finding out is it wasn't just the norm in bad neighborhoods, it was the norm around the world. So we have made ourselves isolated. Go ahead, say that again.
No, I was just going to say that's what was just accepted. You know, I think of when you were talking, I was thinking about the whole Joe Paterno thing at Penn State, you know, that back then, you know, they just buried it. No different than like all the stuff with Catholic priests. The church just moved the priests to, you know, that movie Spotlight.
Doctors.
You know, and they just moved them somewhere else. And it was just how society dealt with it at that time. And again, today we're more conscious, so we're not doing that. But it's like, but we, you know, I talk often with my boyfriend and the fact that we were not given, so generations before us didn't have women who stood up in their power in relationship, and men didn't have examples of men operating from their heart space as opposed to their egos. And so we have, you know, no examples. Like that's the shift that we are in the midst of, going from, you know, ego-based, mind-based consciousness to heart-based consciousness. And it's going to change how the whole world operates. That's why all this infrastructure is falling apart around the globe, because people are going, my heart matters, and it's time for me to pay attention to it.
You know, there was an interesting study, I don't remember how long ago it was, but it was about the types of women, the types of partners women choose to be in relationship with, and their facial characteristics and what it represents. So women who lived in countries that did not have good health insurance, so they had to worry about their children, you know, getting health care and things like that, they were more attracted to men who had higher levels of testosterone. And so their facial features were different and their smell was different. When women were in communities or societies where there was good health care and they had a level of safety and security, they chose men who had less testosterone. And so their face and their body represented less testosterone. So, you know, up until now, most of the world's been in a certain level of fight or flight and trying to evolve out of it. And so we were attracted to toxic relationships. But as we recognize that that way leads towards madness, that's the one that's going to get us sick and screwed up, and that we have to live in a way that cares about ourselves.
Right.
It's the only, we want something different for ourselves. And then some of us, you know, everyone watching this live stream who's in on it, and you and me, are saying, no, we're going to walk forward and lead everybody else out of this.
Right. Right. And do it from a place of love and light, not from a place of fight or flight.
Yeah. Because fight or flight's been the norm.
Well, and I will attest to this, that it was really interesting how the universe gave me an opportunity to practice this a few years ago, that in my divorce process, every time I fought, it blew up in my face. Every time. So it was almost a live example of what I teach today is what I experienced in my own personal world. Fighting your way through it actually just creates more fight. Like attracts like. And we, you know, we have to approach it in a different manner. And when, you know, I remember years ago, Deepak Chopra would say all the time, and I kept going, how does he get to that? Where he'd say, just be the observer of your life. I'm like, because I operate in the world with a lot of masculine energy. I'm in finance. I have 8 brothers. You know, I know how to do that. I know how to push. I know how to get things done. I'm competitive. I know how to do that. The part that I didn't know how to do was not fight and not be, and then be in the divine feminine energy, where it was like, oh, I have to allow the process to work, and I need to learn to receive support, that Julie doesn't have to do it all by herself. And it was like, wow, you know, it's really amazing to where, you know, and I'm watching that collectively happen. You know, I mean, Chicago, case in point. I mean, I was talking to people outside of Chicago and they're like, oh my God, what's going on in your city? I'm like, I don't know what's going on in your city. Like, I don't, the news appearance is so different than what I'm on a micro level experiencing, you know? And yeah, there's unrest everywhere, but everybody's fighting. like we started this live and you're talking about the stuff that's happening, just over the border in Wisconsin right now. And so whether, again, this goes back to the fact that whether it's your personal relationship then leads to systemic inside companies, societies, communities, governments, like we have to unplug from this fight, because fighting only gets more fighting. And that's another thing Deepak always used to say, goes, or maybe, no, it was Marianne Williamson. She always used to say, why do we have, the fight for cancer, the fight, like we're trying to fight it. That's polarity and duality. And polarity and duality is the old energy. It's not where consciousness is going to, and there's nothing we can do about it except choose our hearts and choose to respond in a different manner. Hard to do when we're in our limiting beliefs and the consciousness from what we had when we were growing up.
Right. And from and from a physical perspective, what's happening is when we are angry, so my problem as an empath is that I would get angry, but then I would use some other strategy to try to keep myself safe. So disassociation was a big one for me. I would disassociate from things a lot, or people please. But many times I would judge other people and say, oh, they're angry. I would never be angry. I would never let myself be angry. I would never express my anger on someone else. So you needed to learn the strategy of finding balance, and going more to your heart center. And I had to learn the strategy of speak the truth, even if it hurts somebody's feelings, not necessarily the emotional truth, but the clear truth. Like I wouldn't stand up for myself in a fight because I saw myself as above that. I'm above this. I'm not going to come down to your level and fight. I'm never going to be the bully and the monster that you are. And I would hold that as a little chip, as a little resentment, my little poker chip.
Like I was up on a pedestal. Yeah. I'm going to be up here while you're doing your shenanigans down here.
Exactly. And what we're doing is we're telling another human being that they are worthless to us. And you know what? People hear that. When we say we're above them and we don't have the same human emotions as they do, we're telling them that they're less than us. We're pushing the insecurity button. But when I allow myself to get angry and to express myself, not in a way of, not in a way that's anything but extremely truthful, because people can't argue with the truth. And when you say the truth very clearly and very groundedly, it's a game changer in your relationships and your communication. When you can say, instead of getting in the back and forth tit for tat, you let the other person do what they need to say. And then when they're done, then you say what you need to say. You say the things like, yes, I did do those things. And you've done this and this and this and this and this. The end of story. I'm not discussing it anymore. We're both now on an equal playing field. Instead of they're a bad guy and I'm going to feel bad for myself.
Well, and I've learned that now, being in relationship post-divorce, that like the communication piece is really key, because for years, so the women in my family were always taught to just, be pretty, keep your mouth shut. What are you doing? Like just fall in line. And I've never been wired to fall in line.
Wash the dishes, serve everybody else.
Take care.
All the men watch the football game in the living room while the women are cleaning up and getting ready for Thanksgiving dinner.
You just described my whole family life.
Yeah.
Literally.
Dad sits there and all the food goes around him. So he's served first because he had a long, hard day. And then once he's done, everybody else gets their portion. Do you know what that turned into for me? I would hoard food. Like if someone had a bowl of something, I get my own little bowl and I would fill up my own little bowl. So I had my bowl and so you can't take my food. So I get enough. I'm going to hoard this. And it wasn't until a friend pointed it out to me. They're like, you don't have to hoard your food. I will share with you.
One of my aunts told me, she goes, Julie, I'm just saying, now that you're in college, I want you to observe what happens at Thanksgiving at grandma's house with your immediate family. Now, I have 11 brothers and sisters. So when we came, it was 14 of us walking in the door.
Locusts.
So I was a sophomore in college, and then I was like, okay. And now, mind you, my mom was one of 9. So, you know, there's like 30 plus grandkids, and now there's great grandkids, all that.
Yeah. Oh my God. I could never live like that.
Yeah.
I would start punching people.
So I decided this particular time, I decided to observe. And I was like, and it's exactly what you talked about. She goes, Jewel, by the time your family is done, there was no mashed potatoes left because of that hoarding that you're talking about. Like, we all just went in for it because it was like, you don't know if anything's going to be there later. So you go in for it, you take it, and then you're like, okay, I got my little pot. And I always thought Thanksgiving was awesome because it was like everything in abundance. Like that, it was funny how it wired in me to be abundant and to have lots of choices. And so whereas the same person at the same dinner was just like, there's nothing left for me, you know? And it was just like, oh, wow. Like, this is what, like, our childhoods have created basis for ourselves in how we now interface in the world. It's like amazing. And
so your family was bullying the rest of your family. And if and your aunt loved you enough to say, Julie, get your head out of your butt. When you are doing these things, this is how it affects other people. Stop focusing only on yourself. And that's what we do in our toxic relationships. We're saying, you know what, you can have your head up your butt all you want. I really don't care because I don't care about you enough because I'm better than you and I don't need you anymore. Right.
Well, it was funny because then, so 4 weeks later is Christmas Eve, go back to grandma's house, the same thing again. And I told my siblings, like, hey, do you realize we're doing this to people in our family? And then, so we all were like, yeah, Aunt Jean, why don't you guys go? Like, we let everybody else go before us. And it was like, and it shifted after that because then we were aware of it because to your point, my aunt loved us enough to share that information of her experience. And then it started to shift and it was just like, wow. But like, even to this day, like I watch that patterning because you can see where that patterning continued to go down in generations and where it's not, where the pattern has stopped. And it's just so interesting to me. You know, and even when I went into relationship, you know, with my boyfriend, he had said to me, he goes, why is it that you cook and do everything for people when they come over? Why can't they be part of the process? And I was like, I don't know, because I was just used to doing it. You know, it was just like, that's just what we did. And super interesting.
And cutting people out and other people didn't know, how to be a part of it.
I think it's important for people to understand that we want to blame people, but really we really have to be honest with ourselves in how our participation created the reality, because we are the creators of our lives. And I didn't know how to be in my divine feminine side of myself enough to allow and receive support for people to actually show up for me.
Right. You kept cutting them off and shutting them down, and they didn't want to fight with you because, you know, why bother? It's easier
I'm a
just
strong
to let it do
personality.
everything.
Right.
They don't want to stand up to, I mean, so there's so much more going on than we assume. You know, we look at someone as if they're a caricature. We don't look at them as if they're a deep, meaningful human being with a lot of stuff going on. I mean, when I went and got my massage license, I went to this great little hippie school in Chicago called Chicago College of Healing Arts. It was on Devon near Ridge.
Sure, yeah.
Anyways, it was, she was the owners, she was a high priestess in Kabbalah and did like white tiger Asian medicine, sexuality stuff, and was an herbalist. And he was like high up in the Masons, and they did mystery school in the back. I mean, I was like, this is the place for me. So, I went and I know, a little rural Rita. And so I was getting a massage done by somebody in the class. It was a small class, like 14 people. And he was a creep, He was this, he was this, man who had bad social skills and bad communication skills and had been alone and was angry, and and he was in this massage program and he's massaging me and I'm getting very angry and agitated, and so within minutes I stopped. And even though the part of you wants to say, because you're such a creep, get your freaking hands off me, creepo. This is what you want to say. But fortunately I'm smart enough, I have enough self-defense mechanisms in place that I always pause and reframe something until I can think about it. So I said, you know what, something's coming up for me. I'm not feeling comfortable. It's nothing that you're doing. I just need to get a little bit of space. It's not personal. So I did that. And then I went to the owner of the school, the high priestess in Kabbalah. And I said, hey, this happened. What's your thoughts on it? And she gave me this piece of advice. Genius. When you allow yourself to be victimized by someone, when you allow yourself to be bullied without standing up for yourself, without respecting yourself, without pushing back, without with just letting it happen, you're turning them into a bully. You're turning somebody who's just a normal human being into some monster, into some victimizer. And you're seeing that in them, which is going to make it worse because, now they feel that, now they feel your energy and that makes them angrier and they act out even more, so we have to stop turning when we blame each other, we're turning each other into assholes, and we're not. Well, we're all human beings doing the best that we know how. Maybe someone isn't good for me and I need to have some space. Maybe I love them enough, like your aunt did, to say, hey, open your eyes. Stop thinking that the world revolves around you. There's a lot more going on here. And when we stop to do that, we actually gain more power.
So let's talk about that. So in terms of I just think of, situations in my world, where you are being attacked and you are being people are saying things about you going, that is not who I am. My natural reaction was to bite back. And like I said, every time I fought, it blew up in my face. Mm-hmm. And so when you hold the space of not being the victim, but yet where's that line in terms of don't be the victim and have somebody be the bully, but yet stand up for the behaviors that need to no longer be happening?
So the first step is exactly what your aunt told you to do, which is pause and observe. Once you do that, you are out of your own fight or flight reaction. So as soon as you're triggered, the most important, highest leverage thing that you can do is pause and regulate your nervous system, however you do it. That needs to be the only thing on your mind. I need to pause and regulate my nervous system. Then when you do that, you can think clearly again. And you can look at the situation more intuitively and say, yes, this behavior is inappropriate. And you can think to yourself, you know what, this is going to keep happening. How do I want to deal with it? So in some people's lives, what they do is they go with the immediate reaction and never look at it again. Whereas if you pause, you regulate, you intuitively sort of look at the situation, hold it lightly while you look at it, you start to say, you know what, the next time this happens, this is how I want to handle it. And I think these are the words that I want to say because they really represent who I am. And they're not based on shame or anger, but they're definitely truthful. And it says something like, what can I say? This is what's happening with my family. You need to stop saying these things to me because I have a lot going on right now, a lot more than you have going on. And if you can't stop, I'm going to have to leave because there are way more important things going on here than how you feel.
Right.
And I'm not going to allow myself to feel like I'm beat up anymore. It's not about controlling the other person because you can't.
I tell you, that has been the most difficult and challenging piece that I have watched people go through is that and it's been me. So like when I started dating again after my divorce, he would say to me, Jewel, I don't need to be fixed. You don't need to fix me. And I was like, fix you? I'm like, I'm not trying to fix anybody. And then all of a sudden I started realizing going, oh my God, I've spent my entire life trying to fix people. Because
that's interesting.
I was the second oldest of 12 children. So a lot of responsibility was put on me as a kid. And I tried to fix everything. I tried to make things better for people. And I remembered when I first started going into all this holistic work, one of my first teachers, 𝘰𝐻𝑚, she said to me, she goes, Julie, you've made it easy for your sister to be in her marriage because you've made it tolerable because you kept stepping in trying to fix everything. And I was like, all I wanted to do was help her. Like I thought I was being a giver and a helper, and it was really me interfacing and trying to fix things. And really what I learned in my, one of my mentors is 𝘾𝐻𝙧, and he would say to me when I worked with him one-on-one for 4 years in a row, he said to me, Jewel, the only thing to do is to accept everything that arises in your life, because then you avoid your suffering cycles. And
yes,
again, that was another thing where I was like going, oh my God, there was all these little nuggets while I was on my journey that kind of put things together for me. And then I was like going, accept everything that arises. And I'm like going, there are things that then arise that you're going, that's not okay with me. And it's like, okay, so I have to accept it. I have to not fight or flight. I have to not like completely rewire how I've responded to the world in so many ways, and then accept it. But I've learned that in that acceptance, it doesn't mean to roll over and just keep letting it happen, to your point earlier of, don't be the victim in it. But
that's just another stress pattern.
Yes. And it's like, I've tried it. I always describe it as, it's like, well, I tried this door. I tried this door. I tried this door.
Right. That's what I mean. I tried getting angry. I tried controlling everybody. I tried being rigid in my thinking. I tried disassociating. I tried M&Ms. All of those are stress patterns.
Right.
They're all the wrong answer.
Right. And so tell people what the right answer is, because I'd love for you to put it in your words.
Yeah. Let's see if people can get a visual in their head. On the right side of the chart is people pleasing, disassociation, rigid thinking, working harder, and getting angry. Those are all the ways that we react and respond when our nervous system is not in harmony, when our nervous system is what we call dysregulated. And what that looks like in the brain is all of these hot spots, like a band that's out of tune, like a drum section that just they're all in their own head. So whenever you're dysregulated, and you are because you're angry, you're rigid in your thinking, you might be disassociated, you might be people pleasing or fixing things, you might be just working really hard and being successful. That's your cue that you are dysregulated. Right. You're regulated when your head brain and your heart brain and your gut brain are working in sync. And your brain,
how does one get those in sync?
They get them in sync by, like I said, when you observe and recognize when you're dysregulated, when you're in any of your patterns.
Right.
And you stop. You do something else. You pause. Maybe instead of just working harder, you take a bath. Or maybe
I've learned to just not respond to the issue at hand immediately, and then go back to it. Even if I like type out a response and then I let it sit, and then I come back and look at it going, yeah, I actually can see how I misread that maybe, and I was in my patterning, and but I was able to walk away and give it I always talk about, don't energize it, right? Don't give it energy. Don't, click in.
That's what pause is all about. If you pause, you stop giving whatever it is energy, because there's no right, You know, of those choices, when you're dysregulated, none of them are good choices. The
Right.
only good choice is to get regulated.
Right.
Now, what regulation looks like in our body is like an orchestra that's working together, or a well put on play. There's all these different roles and they're all working in sync, and you feel a flow. That's the flow. You feel like you're connected with the universe.
Yep.
That's who you're supposed to be. And if you're not that, you need to get there as soon as possible.
And it's just about being in that state of neutrality and what they call about being in the flow, in the present moment, and in the now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Big, big concepts that are not easy.
No, but they're a lot simpler than we think, especially if you come at it from the body mind. You know, I always found all those big ideas hard for me to grasp. You know, let go and let God. You know what? Screw you. I feel tense. My stomach hurts. My shoulders are, you know, knotted, and I can't eat. And you're just telling me to let go and let God. You know what? Go away. I don't want to hear from you.
I'm sorry.
We get French, but like, mad.
Go yourself.
Go fuck. Yeah. You know what? Because right. We've got all of these people telling us how to be a higher version of ourselves. Totally. And we feel incapable of it, and failures, and ashamed that, you know, all the gurus are saying, well, just let go and let God. And like, just surrender. That was always my biggest joke. Surrender. Just surrender. You know, that was my joke all the time.
It's like, what are you
physically,
talking about?
Our body. Yes, exactly. Because physically, our internal world is dysregulated. Yeah. The way we regulate it is all the things that people have shamed women for over the last many, many generations. You know what regulates your nervous system? Go into the spa. You know what else regulates your nervous system? Reading a book.
My favorite in Chicago.
Mm-hmm. You know what else regulates your nervous system? Going barefoot in the grass. You know, shamed and the hardest thing, I think, which get us out of fight or flight.
Well, and I think that's one of the hardest parts right now is that people are, you know, there's this extra layer of the pandemic going on. I took my kids to go get ice cream yesterday, and I watched this woman who got so mad at me because too many of us walked into the building at once. And I go, ma'am, I'm not leaving half of my kids outside with protests going on in the north side of Chicago and come and have, I go, we'll stay 6 feet from you. So this regulation that's going on with people right now is because, like, we're not like putting our feet in the sand and walking along the beach here in Chicago, and we're not walking in the grass. You know, if you're on the burbs, yeah, you got plenty of grass, but in the city, it's a concrete jungle. Like, where are you grounding yourself? Where are you finding that internal balance? And so I think it's just this bubble that is starting to boil over, and we have to, we really do have to find other tools and techniques in whatever arena that you're in to make that happen, because it is those little things. Like, I know every single time my kids transition from their dad's house to my house, it's a change and it's vulnerable, along with remote school learning and all this other stuff, that I need to take them outside and I need to ground them. I need them to be with nature. I need them to find their centers. Otherwise, 2 hours into it, I'm watching one of them take a swing at another one because they're dysregulated inside because for whatever reason, they're not grounded in the transition and the change. And every single person is dealing with this right now on different levels. And it's not
and many people's amygdalas aren't developed. It's a muscle that we need to also strengthen. And our amygdala, if it stays immature, we end up triggering very quickly. And if we had trauma or some other underlying thing, we'll trigger very, very quickly. And so we have to train ourselves that when we trigger, we have to course correct. We have to find some way. Now, I use a number of tools which work great because I don't always feel comfortable saying, you know what, I'll be back in an hour while I go for a walk. You know, that isn't always convenient. And so I have a number, at least four really good ones that I use all the time. So if your kids are dysregulated, it's not their fault, and they're doing the best that they know how. And it's true with everybody. If someone is dysregulated, it's not their fault, and they're doing the best that they know how.
Right.
Me too. And we need to figure out how to calm their nervous system down. So the first one is havening. Havening is based on touch. You know, I got into massage therapy because I was so stressed out by my life, and nothing, not mantras, not music, nothing would calm me down. You know, of course, on the outside, I looked very successful, but on the inside, I was getting sick and had tension, and, you know, my chakras were shut down, and, you know, I had all sorts of issues, and I didn't take care of myself because I was frozen. The only thing that would make me relax is laying naked next to my husband for like an hour and a half. He'd have to fall asleep. I'd say, you know what, you need to fall asleep. We can't have sex unless you fall asleep first, you know, because then I can be naked next to you and that touch can calm me down. And havening is based on that. Havening is where you give yourself the touch that you need, and it naturally, automatically calms your nervous system down. Touch is one of the most powerful ways to calm ourselves down. So havening is where you stroke your arms, your upper arms, 20 times. If you can't do it because you think you'll look like a lunatic and people will ask too many questions, you can stroke your hands. Why else do you think people have always wrung their hands or stroked their hands? So if you stroke your hands 20 times, that works. If you stroke your face 20 times, that works. And just notice it. It'll feel like a chunk, like something just chunked down, like your nervous system let go. It's not going to do this. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've used that even with clients and myself since you've taught me that, because it works so well to calm yourself and snap you out of where it is that you're at into where it is that you want to go. If anyone watching this has not tried that yet, when you are emotionally triggered and you just do this, I actually even now have my kids do it. And then all of a sudden it regulates, like your whole system goes, and it grounds you. It's
exactly.
It's super simple and super easy, and it gets you completely out of your trigger. Yeah. Super, super good advice.
You have to train yourself to use it triggered. So the second one that I use are acupressure points called TAT points. And they've been around in Chinese medicine as a really good secret for thousands of years. And then a woman named Tapas Fleming rediscovered it and brought it out. So these are called TAT points, and they're acupressure points that calm your nervous system down, you know, immediately, just like the havening does. So it's your thumb and your ring finger, and they go on the inside of your eyebrows. And then your two middle fingers kind of rest in the middle of your forehead. And the other hand rests at the back of your head, just like on the back of your skull, top of your neck. And you can just hold that. You know, people ask me, they're like, should I say anything special? Should I do anything?
Well, I remember when I
like, no, you can be as hateful and awful in your head as you want.
Yeah, I remember when the day that I received these legal papers of my ex filing against me for child abuse and child endangerment, because I took my kids to Sedona, Arizona for vacation in June. You had me talk to you about the situation while holding those points, and I was sitting there telling you all about it. And again, I was like, I can't even fathom why he would even think that filing a lawsuit, child abuse against me is like
scary stuff.
I'm the one that pays alimony. Like, okay, so you're trying to put me in jail and then you won't get paid. Like, I don't understand how this all works. On top of the fact that you were just afraid that our kids got on an airplane. That's really all it boiled down to during coronavirus.
Yeah.
And
so I was just looking for something to poke you with.
Yeah. And it was so interesting that when you had me do those points, when he did that, I was sitting there and I was like, again, I was talking about the scenario as I was holding those points, and maybe a minute, after talking about it, I could feel my whole nervous system just calm down and get present. And then what you said to me afterwards, you're like, okay, you can take your hands off. And she goes, and you said to me, okay, now you can talk to me about it. And I was in a completely different space to talk about it because my whole nervous system after that was regulated. And it was just like, so why did it all trigger me? I learned through all that because I've spent an entire lifetime trying to be perfect, like having it all together and like going, what do you mean you're putting out there in the world that what? Like it's completely against everything I've ever been wired to do, on top of the fact that it's not true. And I'm like going, but you're trying to make it be true. And again, none of it's my stuff. Zero of it is my stuff.
None. He doesn't even see you. They don't even see you.
Right. And
you're
so,
a metaphor.
So I would encourage those of you guys who are watching this, like the next time you're in a situation, in a relationship, whether it's your kids, employer, whatever, and if you hold those points and you hold on your amygdala and you don't even have to talk to any other human being, just talk to yourself verbally out loud. Remember, everything is vibration. So it's important to put the words out there in the world, because then you verbally can shift the vibration, then you get it out of your body and you release it. That's what's important. And I'm like sitting here going, between havening and those points, like they're clutch and if you're in the middle of a restaurant or business meeting, you may not do that, but go to the bathroom, go in the stall and be like, okay, this whole situation, blah, 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 blah.
Right.
And just talk about it. Because it will calm you down out of your trigger. It's really good. So thanks for giving me the space.
And the bonus is that, the bonus is that it heals. Yeah. Well, and the bonus is that it heals the trauma in the first place. When you're present to yourself while you're re-experiencing a trauma on a physical level, it dissolves the trauma button that's in your brain. When you have a trauma that hasn't been dealt with, it turns into a trauma button in your brain. And that trauma button then triggers you every time something reminds you of it. And you keep getting re-triggered and re-triggered and re-traumatized and re-traumatized. When you do that while you're triggered, it dissolves that button and you'll have less trouble with being triggered by it. The side effect of all of this, though, is your emotions are a lot closer to the surface and you express yourself a lot more, but you'll realize that that authenticity is really who you need to be. That's the most effective.
Well, you're not.
So let's say you're in the let's say you're in the middle of a meeting, and you can't, hold your head, you can't stroke your arms, and you look like a dope.
Like, what? I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, what are you doing? You're gonna look like a dope. I totally get it. So, okay. This is what you can do when you need to stay level and calm. You're talking to the judge and he's, and your ex-spouse is accusing you of everything and you've been out and you have a cucumber, and keep your nervous system regulated, even though you want to. So put one foot on the ground, like normal, just on the ground, blah, blah, blah. Yep. The other foot goes on your knee, just like this, blah, 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 no big deal. One hand goes on the bottom of the foot and one hand goes on the knee, just like this, no big deal, just resting on your leg. So you're looking very casual. You just have your ankle on your knee and your hands on your knee and your foot. Guess what? They can be calling you, they can be telling you your deepest, darkest secret, which they found out. And they're going to share with the world and they're going to blackmail you with it. Right. And you can do this pose and you will be the winner in the room because you will not be dysregulated. You'll still be able to think. As long as you hold this pose, and I've done it in very tense situations, you're able to keep that tenuous hold on your self-control.
Yeah.
Without shutting down, without going into any fight or flight. So that's a good one in the middle of a meeting.
So can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So when a person so you do these things, so do these trauma buttons ever go away?
Yeah. Every time you do the havening, every time you do the TAT points, it sends, I believe it's a stream of calcium through the trauma button and it dissolves the glue around it. And, just like with anything, just like with all weathering, eventually it breaks off, just like the glaciers are melting, just like all of that. It dissolves the glue around it and the trauma button goes away sooner rather than later.
So let's talk about this, because this is also one that you've taught me, is that, and it was very interesting. I had someone who I was coaching, actually, she was a client that brought this up this week. She goes, she left a toxic relationship, and she's in the process of divorce, but she's in a relationship with somebody else. And at this point, and she told me, she goes, Julie, I'm really afraid because like he's got similar traits of my ex, and I don't want to repeat patterns. She goes, but then I have these physical experiences with him when we're having sex, and I'm like shaking uncontrollably. And you've taught me that shaking is shifting the trauma in your body. Can you talk to that point?
Yes. When we're traumatized, trauma happens on a number of different levels, not only the nervous system level where now there's tension, but also chemically with your hormones, with your muscles, everything, your body is responding and remembering the pattern of fight or flight. And let's say you were a little girl and someone was touching you in a way that made you scared and angry and anxious, but they were an adult. They were somebody that you were supposed to respect, somebody you were supposed to do what they told you to do. You needed to be a good, perfect girl. And so inside, you are holding down that feeling so that you can look like you have it all together and you can maybe get yourself safely out of the situation. All right. What's happening in your body is it's releasing enormous amounts of adrenaline. Where's that adrenaline going? Guess what? It's getting absorbed into your muscles, absorbed into your tissues.
Right.
Because you can't express it.
Right.
And so now you've taken this whole pattern, this whole trauma, and all the chemicals associated with it, all of the ideas and thoughts, all the brainwave patterns associated with it, and it's being stored in your body. When you're given a place where you can be open and vulnerable, and sexual experiences can do that because they can be so powerful that they can override. It's a great healing practice of combining pleasure while you're working through difficult things. And so that relationship can trigger the same inner experience, but because there's pleasure, she's able to stay open. Her nervous system is able to stay accepting because it feels good while she's reflecting on it.
Right.
And the body's able to finally release the adrenaline into your system so it can be processed through and peed out or sweat out or screamed out or orgasmed out or whatever you want it to do. But it needs to get physically off of your system. So when she's shaking, it's the release of adrenaline that she's finally allowing herself to process through her physical body and get rid of it. Otherwise, it's been stored in God knows where, wherever her body put it. For me, it was always my root chakra. So my uterus and all my sexuality was really tied to that. And so there was a lot of tension there. My digestion was always bad. And when it's ready to be released, first of all, it goes to your liver. So it may feel uncomfortable and tense around your liver. And it also goes to your diaphragm. And so you'll feel tension and discomfort in your diaphragm. And that's your body physically getting ready to process through and process out these latent traumas, which have been stored in your system. And so that's why she shakes. It's good for her.
Yeah.
But she also needs to make sure that she takes the time to think about everything involved with that, because she could have unrecognized sexual trauma. And it can happen by watching a movie that you weren't ready to watch. If our brains aren't ready, it's whatever is causing us to react.
Well, and I have noticed on a physiological level, because you taught me that in terms of, that shaking is just letting things go, that as I've continued to do my own personal work, that my body is releasing it pretty fast these days. Like I will be in an intense situation, and within the hour, I'm shaking and releasing it.
Yes, and that's what you want.
Right. Exactly. Well, good stuff. Well,
Yay.
Rita, I am so glad, you know, I am so touched that you're willing to do this Awakening Your Relationships with us, because you are a wealth of knowledge to help so many people that we need to shine light on these things so that people can get to this healing space. And so how do people find you?
Yeah. Right now, they can go to 𝑖nspireMassage.com. Soon it'll be �ＲitaHickmanCoaching.com. I help women who are in narcissistic and toxic relationships really get on that healing path instead of the angry, just cut them off. Because even after you get a divorce, as you know, the troubles don't end because
I can attest to that. All the shit that you didn't want to.
Yeah, you need to deal with what's inside of you.
Yeah, right. Certainly.
Exactly. So if women are looking to get out, I help them come into alignment and become that higher version of themselves, so that they can.
Oh, I think we lost you there, Rita. So everybody, I'm not sure what's going on with Rita.
Oh, here we go.
There you are. Okay, excellent.
Here I am.
So the last thing we heard was if women are looking to get out.
Oh, if women are looking to get out, I help them get all the support that they need, the new tools, the new mindsets, the new rewiring in order to get out.
Beautiful.
Even if it's just of the pattern or the dynamic, you can keep the relationship, you know, but if you change, many times the relationship changes too.
Oh, it's incredible. And you've always said to me, like, Julie, you're not going to repeat the same patterns because you're not the same person and you're not interfacing in relationship as the same person. And that has definitely been true in my world. So I am a living, breathing, walking person that is doing exactly what Rita is referring to and talking about. And Awaken Your Health is this Monday night at 8 p.m. Central. So, and then we have Awaken Your Spirit next Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. Central. And of course, join us next Thursday again for Awaken Your Relationships at 9 a.m. Central. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Rita.